I grew up in a hoarder home. My dad was very mentally ill, killed himself. I just felt so hopeless about my life. I'm $100,000 in debt. I was really struggling with myself. I knew my dad was as well.
Do you think those lies essentially got you into the school?
I don't mind being called a scammer because, I have lied. Put that shit on my tombstone.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Let's Get Into It podcast hosted by me, Sloan. Today we are joined by Caroline Calloway, who is a self-described writer, art historian, and teacher, as well as an influencer with over 600,000 followers on Instagram. How are you doing, Caroline?
Hi, I'm also add to that list. Scratch teacher. I don't know what I was like blacked out when I fucking said that. I don't know. I was probably drunk or high when I said that because I don't remember saying that at all. Let's scratch that and add biggest Sloan fan in
Oh, yeah?
in the world. Yes.
Let's go ahead and add scammer as well, huh?
I love your content, and I'm such a fan of you as just a human being. I don't know if your listeners know this, but Cece Suarez on YouTube. Do you want to tell the story, or should I tell the story?
So about like a year and like 4 months ago, we all got together in Florida. Cece Suarez, Caroline, and I, and we had lunch together. So it's so crazy to see her here on the screen talking about this because we talked about her book, which is coming. Is it out yet? It's not out yet. Coming out.
It is out. It is out.
It is out, yeah. Ready for purchase.
I know. It's only out in the luxury first edition. And right now I'm talking to real publishers behind the scenes to put it in stores, by the way.
When we got lunch together, I mean, I have to admit, I was like doubtful because you had this book that you'd been talking about for years. And you told us, you're like, yeah, I haven't really even started on it. And I'm super impressed to see that like in under, like a year and a half, under 2 years, you've come together and put this book out. How are you feeling about that?
I am honestly so proud of myself. Also, am I allowed to say how drunk the three of us got? I love how you're like, we got lunch together. We got day drunk for like 6 hours together.
I ended up like just crying on your balcony, having a therapy session with you guys.
Food. I definitely don't think you ate any food.
Yeah, we were drunk and just going through it together.
We were going through it.
I think it's like super important though too, because Caroline, I want to have her on because you are controversial, but you're also misunderstood, and I feel like having the opportunity to like get to know you as a person, that was really eye-opening. And I also think that you are a good person. You just had so many obstacles along the way, and your book describes them beautifully.
Thank you so much. Honestly, for a few years there, I really felt like I could not catch a fucking break. Like I went viral for the creativity workshops. My ex-best friend used that as an opportunity to sell this tell-all to New York Magazine. 2 days after the New York Magazine tell-all comes out, my father's body is found. It's a suicide. My mom got cancer. My grandma died. Like I really just felt like I could not catch a fucking break there for like 4 years. And it was tough because, when we had that, we were, before we started this podcast, you and I were talking about how like we were each going through it in our own ways. And like my grandma had just died. And I feel when the three of us got absolutely trashed on my balcony in Florida. I was just in grief, and because of her death, we were really close. Since my dad was so mentally ill, she really was like a third parent to me. And it's just so impossible to make any kind of art, be it, in my opinion, like good video content, a great book. I'm a shitty painter, but like I definitely am an even shittier painter when I'm like bereaved, like when you're really in a state of grief, it's so impossible to just sit down and try to make something beautiful, first you just have to heal. And because for so many years I felt like I could not catch a fucking break, I just felt like I was accumulating things I needed to heal from, like, faster than I could heal. And it's just been so nice to be in Florida to just, like, honestly just eliminate everything else in my life that isn't, like, healing and writing.
Yeah, I think that's so validating too, because for me, I've always suppressed a lot of my emotions. And then going through this major depression was like the first time where I was like, oh, I can't just ignore this. It's all consuming. And I had no motivation for something I love to do and that I feel destined to do. And I totally get what you mean. It's like, I guess, writer's block, but like so emotionally intense.
Yeah, did you ever get on medication? I take so much medication. I'm a medicated girly. I used to take 8 pills a day, but then my psychiatrist found a way to just, like, make the pill dosages bigger. So, like, I take the same amount of medicine. I just get to take fewer pills now. But I take 400 milligrams of gabapentin for my generalized anxiety disorder. And then I take fluoxetine, 600 milligrams, which is like Prozac. It's like Prozac, basically. Prozac Nation, Elizabeth Wurtzel.
I probably
like
should
so
be on
brand.
medication. I probably should be, but I
You
no,
went
I
through your
haven't.
depression without it?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, just like
Wow, that's
a little
so.
like
Yeah.
a little natural medication, but it's just once in a while, you know.
Is that vape? By the way, like, what's in the vape? Is it just nicotine?
Oh, that's just nicotine. I actually really going to try to like quit off of these. I'm moving to Florida. It like screwed me up. I never wanted to touch a vape in my life. Moving to Florida, everyone was puffing on them, and then since then coming to California, you know, it's like half oxygen, half vape out here. So it's easy to get addicted. But I do want to go ahead and talk a little bit about how you became as a person, because a lot of people are probably like, who's Caroline Calloway? But you
Yes.
have been like kind of in the game for a minute. So you really picked up on Instagram back in the day. And I want you to talk a little bit about how that happened and how you like low key bought your way there at first.
Yeah, well, it's so funny. I feel like an old person being like, when soda pop used to cost a nickel. Like, when I talk about buying Instagram followers I think I bought them in 2013. So exactly 10 years ago. And to buy 40,000 Instagram followers in 2013, I truly think it was like $4.99. Like, I think it was like less than $5, because the whole, like, in 2013, it's hard to remember how the concept, like, the word influencer hadn't entered the English language yet. Like, we didn't have the concept of, like, you know, hashtag ads and influencer marketing and just this whole scaffolding and ecosystem that surrounds, like, influencers and influencing now didn't exist. And so buying followers was sort of just seen as like a vanity thing. At least that's how I saw it. Because, you know, to buy Instagram followers today, they're so much more expensive because, you know, it's to buy them today is to make a very, like, morally, I would say anything morally questionable to morally bankrupt decision, because, like, followers are a social currency that can be cashed in for literal cash, but also free trips, free clothing, cloudier friends, like, name your prize. But back in 2013, it was just sort of like a number on a screen to, like, have like a K after your followers. Like, Selena Gomez she didn't have more than, I don't know, 100,000 followers. Like, Instagram was still this coastal app that, like, only urban coastal teens were using. And I bought 40,000 fake followers just because, honestly, I always thought that someday I'd be a famous memoirist. And we talked about this on my balcony, how we both always thought Sloan and I both grew up in Virginia, and growing up in Virginia, both Sloan and I feel like I'm giving tell me if you don't want me to tell your,
No, you
like,
go ahead.
because I just think you're just such a wonderful person, and honestly, I want the world to know. But Sloan grew up in, like, didn't you grow up near, like, Leesburg, like, sort of like
Yep.
more rural Virginia? I grew up in Falls Church, which is like the DC suburbs, and Sloan was telling me how he always like wanted to get out of Virginia, had big dreams, was like, I'm not meant for this like Virginia life, which spoke to my essence, because I got out of Falls Church and never looked back. Like, I never want to go back. Like, but I always wanted to be a famous memoirist, so I bought these 40,000 fake followers, just to like honestly like LARP as a famous person, just in my own mind. Like, I just wanted to like cosplay fame, like for me. Like, I didn't think that like anything would come of Instagram, but then 2013, 2014, the app really started gaining momentum. Like, at this point, Selena Gomez has, 1 million followers. And now some other celebrities are on the app too. Like, I don't know why I'm using Selena Gomez as like the metric of Instagram fame, but we're going with it. We're going with it. We're into it now. It's part of the story. But when I really started investing in Instagram intentionally and trying to like build a business and use it to achieve that dream of becoming a famous memoirist was in 2014 and 2015, I sort of saw the very first inklings of what would later become influencer marketing starting to appear. And I realized that you could sell, if you got a big enough following, you could sell them things on social media. Like, you wouldn't have to do it on a blog or take them to a website. Like, you could make the content right in the post itself and deliver it to people in their feeds. And what's more than that is that you could, if you made like really engaging stories and really good writing, you could develop an audience that liked you as a writer. Even though Instagram was a photo sharing app, it had a really high caption limit. And I also realized that you could target your ads if you bought posts from other accounts. And because this was like 3 years pre FTA, like Federal Trade Administration laws about disclosing hashtag ads, what I did was I bought ads. And this is really soda pop used to cost a nickel as well. I would buy packages of 10 ads for $50. And so that's $5 a sponsored post. And these accounts thought that I was throwing my money away. Like, they thought they were scamming me. Like, I'd be like, please take my money. And they'd be like, are you sure? And yeah, I knew that I wanted not just followers, but readers, and not just readers, but readers that were predisposed to become obsessed with what they read. So I targeted like book fandom accounts. Like, The Fault in Our Stars was really big that summer, like all the Green Brothers books, The Hunger Games, obviously Harry Potter. I was at Cambridge University, so like that was really my demo for sure. Let's see, Pretty Little Liars, Gossip Girl, like any book series that had like a lot of mainstream appeal, usually because they'd been made into television or movies. And so I bought ads, and I would look at how these book fandom accounts like wrote their posts. I would look at what adjective they use when they really like something. Is it awesome? Is it amazing? What emojis do they use? How many of the emojis? How many exclamation points? Like, what's the punctuation like? Is it all lowercase? And then, because this is illegal now, but I cannot emphasize this enough, was not a crime in 2014 because the law wouldn't exist for years. I would write in the voice of these book fandom accounts being like, look at this, like, this girl writes these amazing stories, like, go follow her. And then once I got enough real followers, like a couple 100,000 actual fans to go with my 40,000 bot fans. And I think the 40,000 bot fans were really helpful because they helped me grow faster, because when I bought those ads for myself, they were stickier and like had a better retention rate from like the turnover. Is that the right word? I don't fucking know. I'm not a business person. I don't know corporate speak,
It's like the conversion or something, like click conversion.
Yeah. It had better conversion because people saw the social proof of like the 40,000 followers. And so then once I got like a couple 100,000 real fans, I started to have enough natural organic engagement on my page to start like qualifying for, I think it was called the Explore page on Instagram, or the Discover page, or I feel like they've changed the name. I don't fucking know. And then the account started growing naturally. And so, yeah, I feel like, I've been on the internet for 10 years, And I think each year I've been more famous, infamous, notorious than the last. But I think people do forget, especially if they've joined the Caroline Calloway journey recently, it's easy to forget that I've actually like been a, an influencer even in like the earliest days of before the word existed, for 10 years. And I've been, yeah, the
Killing
first
it.
5 years, yeah, the first 5 years I was a fairy tale. The next 5 years I was a scammer. I really
Yeah.
hope the next 5 years I'll be an author. Fingers crossed.
Well, I think it's also really in like you're like a case study in a way because like what you were describing about influencers, it really clicked with me because like before that we followed celebrities or famous people, and this platform gave you a medium to kind of build yourself up as someone like a normal citizen who is interesting enough to follow, and then people start to behave like you are some celebrity, and ultimately you started building this like Instagram career back in 2013. How did this kind of bleed into you going to Cambridge?
Yes. Well, so when I bought the 40,000 bots in 2013, I was still going to NYU. I applied to Cambridge 3 times, and they rejected my application the first 2 times. There was a period in my life when I was like a sophomore at NYU, and everyone I knew, except for my mom, was like, Caroline, this is your life. You gotta let the Cambridge thing go. Like, I'm sorry, but you're crazy, and this is not happening for you. Like, look around you. This is your life. Like, you go here. Like, you go to NYU. Taylor Swift's alma mater. A big misconception, that I want to clear up right now on this podcast is that I fucking love NYU, and I loved it before Taylor Swift became an alumna, but I love it even the fucking more now. But at
Why
NYU,
Cambridge? Like what's special about Cambridge that you were so fixated on going there?
yeah, I think, I part of it was a little slice of it was vanity. Like, I just feel like I have a bit of vocal fry. I say like a lot. I'm very enthusiastic. I think I'm a very smart person. I think if you had to like I think my intelligence is like one of my favorite things about myself, but I really think because of the body that I'm in, I think people really underestimate me and don't think I'm smart. And because I refuse to like calm the fuck down and like not act like a little like yippy golden retriever, people really see it as like a mark of as proof of my stupidity. So I think a little part of me just wanted the intellectual validation. And I ended up lying on my application to get
I
in.
saw your transcript.
I know, but to be fair, I didn't cheat while I was there, so I did do the coursework and I did get the degree. So like I was able to do the work. I just was not. I ended up lying on my application by I got I think a D plus or some sort of D in ancient Greek my senior spring at boarding school, because I was really in love with this guy, and he had a free period during my ancient Greek class, and I was so besotted with this little fucking squash player at Exeter that I would go and fuck him instead of going to ancient Greek class, and I almost failed. So I had forged my Exeter transcript. Like, I literally photoshopped it to like an A minus, I think, and then I lied. So I had a bunch of AP scores. I had like 5s in, I think, Italian, art history, 1 English literature thing, and 1 Latin test. But there were 2 Latin tests, like 2 Latin APs and 2 English lit APs. And I had 1 5 and 1 4 for both Latin and English. And then I lied and just said that I got 5s on both.
Do you think those lies essentially got you into the school?
I don't know is the truth. Like, I'll never know because like I can't ask. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't heard from Cambridge and they haven't taken my degree back as of yet, and I don't want to bother them. Like, if they're not reading the news, I don't want to bring it to their attention.
Exactly. I mean, besides the transcript situation, do you feel like you were qualified to go there, or do you think you kind of scammed your way into that?
This is going to be such a crazy answer, and I am so glad. I've been doing so much press for my book, and I'm not complaining. I'm so grateful for the rave reviews. Like, it's to have
They're great. I mean, the reviews are awesome. Congrats. I was like, wow, I was super excited to read
watched
that.
a post called my first book a masterpiece. Are you literally fucking kidding me? Did you see the New Yorker that just came out? The New York Scammer is funny, engaging, and full of genuine insight. Put that shit on my fucking tombstone. I'm on cloud nine. But talking to these reporters who I don't know, like who haven't cried on my lanai in Florida, I really feel, sometimes I feel really shy and awkward answering this question honestly of like, do I feel like why Cambridge? Do I feel like I scammed my way in? I have to pretend that they're a friend so that I don't go into like, so I don't say the normal thing, because what I'm about to say is like batshit insane. There's your clip for the beginning of the podcast. I watch all your podcasts, by the way, and I can't wait to see what little like sizzle reel you make from this. I love how I'm like a guest, but like also a hardcore fan. I think I should sing it for you now, and like instead of music, just like have me sing it. But the truth is that I have always thought, ever since I was a little girl, that I've always wanted to be a famous memoirist. And, you know, in the same way that I wanted to be an influencer before the world gave us the language to describe influencer, the thing I want to be, I say famous memoirist, but the truth is there's not a word for it. I wanted to live I didn't have an idea for the plot of my life that I wanted to live, but I wanted to live my life in a world that I was not born into. I grew up in a hoarder home. My dad obviously was very mentally ill, killed himself. I think I have, and I also think that like I have madness in the blood. Like, I don't think we know yet. Like, my uncle's schizophrenic. Like, for all I know, what I'm about to tell you is just like diet schizophrenia. It's just like a very like mild form of schizophrenia that I've inherited. But I just always thought, ever since I was little, that my greatest contribution to the world would be to go and see these worlds and write stories that are true, that read like Harry Potter and Gossip Girl and these books that I grew up reading. Like, the books that made me love reading and love books themselves. Like, I wanted those stories, but I wanted them to be true, because something that always like just broke my heart but also really inspired me at the same time was the idea of like, what if you could write about these worlds, these castles, these parties in New York, but it was real and the characters were real and all of it happened. Like, I just wanted that more than anything. And I just always felt like, I never thought I'd be a scientist or an astronaut or a singer, or just like, I always felt like the only way I'd ever contribute to society, and the way that the madness speaking, I think, but I really always felt like I was meant and destined to contribute to society by going to these worlds, living in these worlds, and then writing about these worlds. And so when it comes to like, do I feel guilty about like scamming my way in, or like, do I feel like it was a scam? Like, I definitely think I lied, and like, I'm very cognizant of that. But at the same time, I feel like, I don't even expect to be happy in my own life. Like, I really see my life in service to these books that I want to make and making the best books possible. And I just think that those books will make other people who struggle with madness, but also suicide and all the dark, roiling parts of being a human, and depression and the brain. I think I can make art that can help them. And so like, I do think it was a scam, but I don't feel guilty about it, because I really think that it was what was best for the art I want to make, the art that I've always felt like I should make.
Well, I totally get it, because I grew up, not believing myself, but also believing in myself, but believing I could like get to there in some way. And talking
Can I ask
about
you a question on your
uh-huh.
podcast? Is this allowed? Can
Okay.
you tell me about how you started your YouTube channel? Like, what were you doing in 2013?
So, I mean, since 7th grade, I've always made videos. I've always enjoyed making videos. So I have multiple like YouTube channels with a bunch of private videos. I've just enjoyed like filming and creating. I would say probably in 2013 at that point, I was doing some like basic like videos, kind of like I would make like, well, some would be like stupid like music reviews, but then others would be like kind of a movie trailers. Like I always like wanted to create really short, like they were like 2 minute, 3 minute like movie trailers that make my boyfriends do, usually like horror films, like
Oh
kind
my
of
God,
like
I
very
love.
cringe. Like
Wait,
I'm so
you should
scared.
post one. You should post one. Comment
Oh,
down below if you want Swan to post one.
but
You're like, I'm cutting that part out.
yeah. I mean, going to college, I kind of stopped with some of the YouTube. I did a little bit more vlog things. And then once I started working for the government and I came across a few niche stories, I decided to talk about them on my channel. I had no idea what I was doing. And my videos were like, one would get 300 views, one would get 200 views, and then 90,000 views. This video about, young Sweet Roe, Travis Scott's like fling that he's cheating on Kylie. So it all like I started to notice that I was like good at storytelling because I always loved creating videos, but my videos weren't great. Like I can like look back on them, they weren't like excellent. I just loved doing them. They're for me. So then when I started getting good at making videos, it was interesting because I had such a complex with like trying to accept like what this was becoming because I always told myself like YouTube's not a job. I can never do YouTube full time. Like I would always put myself in a box constantly. And then I started like getting really good at doing it and I was doing it for myself. Like I loved just creating. And when COVID happened, I was like so lonely, locked up in DC. My best friend was my camera and I just put all of that energy into it. And I never thought you could even make money from YouTube or do any of that. So the fact that I went on for a year making more from YouTube than I was the government, but I just continued to work my ass off like 40 hours a week, come home, film videos, edit them myself on the weekends, just film because it gave me like so much life connecting with people and just putting out something like I'm sure putting out this book, it's like you just gave birth to a baby. Shout out Cece Suarez. But like and honestly doing this for like, at least creating content for over like 10 years. It's not on the internet, but looking at how like technology has advanced too, it's so insane to me because I remember being like in 7th grade editing these videos on these like softwares that were so hard to use. And nowadays, like people can make like these TikToks and things with their phones. And I'm like, looking back on that, it makes sense on how everyone like creates content now so quickly and so often, just because like back then, like creating content was a really difficult experience. And I'm glad I had that because now getting into editing and such, people want to create content and want it like this. They want it like that, want views like this. And it's like, I never wanted that like instant gratification. I just loved sitting there and figuring out the programs and changing, this file to make it into something new. It just felt very, I guess it is like art. I don't think myself like as an artist, but I guess it is artistic.
I think of you as an artist. I 100% think of you as an artist, like 1000%. Like I can't believe you don't. Like you are an artist, Sloan, and you are excellent at what you do. Like, and you have perfected the craft. Like I am. I loved, by the way, not to like spend this whole podcast hyping you up. Loved your interview with Holly Madison. I love her so much. Oh my God, what was she like?
Amazing, gorgeous, so sweet.
I don't even know why I'm asking. I fucking know. Like I saw that both parts of the interview. But do you have any Holly Madison anecdotes? I like her so much.
We've kind of filmed
so many books. Speaking of artists, burlesque dancer and author, what can't she do?
Seriously, reality star. I'm surprised she doesn't have music.
Yeah, she just seems so nice and like such a good mom.
So genuine and just someone who also I think didn't really expect like a lot of this to happen and just kind of like took a chance on life, kind of like what you talked about. Like we didn't really, we weren't born into anything like necessarily special, but we like found our way. And I think she just like took the opportunities and she's now built something beautiful. And I'm super impressed by her.
Yeah, Holly, if you're out there, we're your biggest fans. We hope you're doing great. But in order for my books to reach the maximum number of readers, like you need fame. And I just feel like when I say I want to be a famous writer in my voice and my body, people, without even realizing it, like sort of connote like a sort of like gold digging, conniving, attention whore sort of vibe
superficial,
to it. Superficial, shallow. And it's like, really, I just like, I want to be famous because I want my books to reach the maximum number of readers.
So just so you would write about your life at Cambridge through your Instagram, and you would like romanticize it, and people fell in love with these stories that you would tell. But there's some like fogginess when I look at this part of your life, because Natalie is a big part of who told your story. So I wanted to give
Excellent question.
some context on who Natalie is, how she came into your life, and how people, or why people describe her as your ghostwriter, because you're talking about, this life you want to live, how you would share it on social media, how you wanted to build this, I guess, this bond, almost like a celebrity with these people. But now people look back on it, and like when I read a few articles, I mean, my initial thought is that it was completely fake, and that this Natalie person is who built you.
I'm so glad to explain this, because I don't mind being called a scammer, because I have lied. Like at the time, I definitely didn't think that I'd like ever talk about lying on that application. And now, like 10 years later, I'm very much like at peace with who I was then, because I'm just no longer that person, and I actually like who I am now. But the biggest misconception about me that persists is that I can't write, and that Natalie was my ghostwriter. And people think this because Natalie is smart, and she did a really good job convincing people of that. Basically, so when I had those 40,000 bots in 2013, I am at NYU, and Natalie and I together, we write 1-2-liner jokes, like little short captions, but they were nowhere near the 3-paragraph diaristic, like long form narrative captions that would become my trademark at Cambridge. We collaborate on these jokes. We sit around my apartment, we smoke weed, and we write little one-liners for my captions. No one's reading these. In fact, I have to buy likes to keep up appearances, because every time I post, I don't have only my friends and family are like my real people following me. So I have to buy like a couple, like 1,000 likes, or like 500 likes to like keep up appearances. And for the next 2 to 3 years, I fall out of touch with Natalie. We talk maybe a couple times a year, but more or less I'm living life in England. And it's during this time, 2014, 2015, that I buy those ads with those book fandom accounts. And it's also the time that I, alone, with no fucking help at all from anyone else doing the writing, that I alone write the captions about Cambridge that made me famous. And in fact, my next book, which I want to put out, you're not going to believe this, Sloan, I want to put out 2 more books before the end of the year. And the next book, I know, but I wrote these Cambridge captions alone. And my next book is actually going to be called The Cambridge Captions, because I own the full fucking copyright to every single word that I wrote about my time at Cambridge, because I wrote it alone. But this misconception about me persists because Natalie, I can't be anything but impressed by how masterful she crafted this essay. So when my creativity workshops went viral, I, to this day, I'll die on the hill that I made a niche event for a niche demographic, and everyone who thought it was stupid were people who wouldn't have bought a ticket in the first place. The only reason it got so out of hand was that, like, honestly, I didn't know how to deal with the negative attention of people being like, why are you giving away mason jars? Why haven't you booked venues 6 months in advance? Like, because I'm disorganized and chaos is the brand. But I really think it only got so out of hand because I just handled it so poorly. Like, I canceled the tour, I refunded everyone, then I apologized. People saw that apology as like proof of guilt. But when all of this happened and I went viral as a scam, my ex-best friend Natalie sold this piece to The Cut, and she really capitalized on my bad press and went to New York Magazine and was like, let me tell you how much of a scammer this girl really is. And she, in her essay, she talks about writing these one-liner captions for an audience of no one. Little jokes that no one read because I didn't have a single real follower. And then she zooms over the next 2 to 3 years where we fell out of touch, and alone I wrote the captions that would make me famous, and alone I built my brand. And then she rejoins the story by my senior year. Something we haven't even touched on yet is Adderall.
Well,
Because
I do want to talk to you about the Adderall addiction because
I
I
want
feel
to
like
talk to
that's
you
super.
about the Adderall
But
addiction.
before let's talk briefly about this creativity
Okay.
workshop because I feel like people aren't going to understand it. So
Yes.
essentially, Caroline started building her following and she started to figure out ways to monetize this. So she created a course, like a creativity workshop tour, essentially for her fans to go and meet her and to learn skills on how to become a better writer. You had the prices were about.
It wasn't like it. Honestly, it's why I corrected you when you were like, "She's a teacher," and I'm like, I may have said that, but I'm a crazy bitch, and I do not stand by that. Let's not get it twisted. I'm insane.
So if you're not teaching them anything, $165 for 4 hours, what were they getting?
Okay, it was 6 hours, first of all. But you know what? I'm glad that I'm able to clear this up. I don't think it's fair that so many rumors about just lies, not even rumors, like literal misinformation still persists. It was 6 hours. With it, you got wine, you got salad, you got cookies, you got coffee, you got all this stuff. You also got goodie bags with all this stuff with like inside jokes. You got like little diaries that I had designed, like tote bags, merch, flower seeds. God, I can't even remember what was in it. It was a lot of turquoise stuff, and it was inside jokes from all the Cambridge days. So it did look like random shit to the outside observer. During my Cambridge days, I got super addicted to Adderall, which I will not go on that tangent now. We'll get to that later. But I got super addicted to Adderall, and I also got into a book deal, a $500,000 book deal my senior year of college for a book that I really had no intention of writing. I got into
So they gave you like $100,000, right? Yes. Because it's like a down payment. You blew it without any book, right?
On enough Adderall, $100,000 spends itself. Like you don't even have to, but you don't have to blow it. The money blows itself. It's industry standard in publishing to give 20% of the overall deal up front as what's called a book advance. And I spent my book advance like that. And which then when I got, it took many years. In fact, like from when I spent that advance and gone into that year, I would be like addicted to Adderall for almost 2 more years before I got help. And I didn't go to AA, but I went to 3 different therapists, not all at the same time, but like over 18 months. I did therapy. I moved around, which is why I was changing therapists. And I went 3 days a week for 18 months. And I focused on therapists who specialized in addiction and did like AA informed counseling. So like I did a lot of the steps, but not in order. And I never went to meetings, but I do feel really familiar with like one day at a time AA language. And so during this time, I didn't post at all. I was just really, I didn't really know how I could post. Like I just felt so hopeless about my life. I'm $100,000 in debt. I was also had a severe pill addiction and a very mentally ill father at home. And I was really struggling with suicide myself. I knew my dad was as well. And like, it's not that I made up the beauty, but I left out so much darkness that at a certain point, it was truly lying by omission. I sold a book, a memoir that wasn't even about my life. And I really didn't want to spend the rest of my life signing copies of a fucking book that wasn't even about me. The reason I never delivered that book is because I realized that I had totally lost sight of why I wanted to be a writer, a memoirist in the first place. And I was in a real pickle. I owed my publishers $100,000. My greatest skill, in my opinion, is writing, but I couldn't write about anything that had happened in my life up until 2016 because they owned the rights to it, and they were very kind to not sue me for the $100,000 that they owed. But I knew that if I sold a different book or tried to publish a different book for like the copyright that they owned, I definitely felt like I didn't want to provoke them into suing me. So the point is that I didn't want to write about it on my Instagram, but I needed money. I needed to make money. I didn't want to write about sobriety. I didn't even know what to fucking put on my Instagram grid because it was so Cambridge fairy tale, dark academia coded. But someone made a Twitter thread where they compared like things that I had promised and then the day of photos side by side without including like all the Instagram stories that I posted saying like what I'd do instead and like what like promising the new thing that I actually did. And then Jonah Hill retweeted it and it went viral. And Jonah Hill, karma's a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. So then this went viral on Twitter and people were dragging you. I remember something that stuck with me at lunch that you said that like you apologized and you wish that you didn't because you kind of accepted like, all the blame for something that was still, I mean, I remember you telling me you had a great experience that first workshop. And after that, the reactions were just so bad that you just like pulled out and kind of retreated. And I feel like it could have grown into something more established and maybe more productive if it had more time. But now this went viral and it kind of was like, slandering your name and all your reputation. It wasn't looking great. And your your ex-friend, Natalie, this leech in the corner who's been like waiting for you to fall, decided to hop on this moment, go to the press and share her experience with you and pretty much like discredit everything that you've done on social media. Actually, I thought it was interesting. You wrote in your book that she's a writer nepo baby, and
yeah, her aunt is editor-in-chief of O magazine, and like she got Natalie her first job, but she really did a great job in her article of not only taking credit for my work, and my fame, and making her seem like the brains behind everything.
You have do you feel like you have a lot of anger towards her still to this day? In your book,
funny.
you wrote, you've only ever thought about harming or I guess killing yourself, yet Natalie is a close second.
A close second. Yeah, I was really, it's funny. If you had asked me this a week ago, I would have said yes. Because, I feel like there have been 3 times. It's so funny because everything that she is like upset at me for, and like I'll be the first to admit, like especially during my early 20s and then coupled with the Adderall addiction, like I was a shitty friend. I was like preoccupied, I lied. Especially once I was like really bottoming out in my addiction, like I could go months without even asking a simple question like how are you? And that's unacceptable and rude. But everything that she's mad at me for doing, I did 7, 8, 9 years ago, like high out of my mind on drugs. And everything that I'm mad at her that she did stone cold fucking sober, like within the last months to like 3 years. And the first time she sold me out was obviously during the creativity workshop when Jonah Hill retweeted that and all hell broke loose in my life when she sold that story to The Cut. But the second time she sold me out was 2 days after that story came out. My father's body was found rotting inside of his hoarder house in Falls Church, Virginia. And his body was actually so decayed that the police couldn't rule out murder. A Virginia detective actually called me in New York and asked me if I had any leads about foul play. But it was presumed suicide. He had overdosed on, ironically, pills. I say ironic because, and I'm not even sure if I'm using this word correctly now that I think about it, but Natalie, there are so many things in her that like taking credit for my work, making me seem like just a terrible person. But one of the ways that she did that was that she erased my Adderall addiction from the record. Like I had to make amends to her as part of like my recovery program. Like the last time we spoke before her New York piece came out was when I sent her an email detailing like every way that I'd ever wronged her and like apologizing. And she very carefully says in her New York piece, like, she talks about like the last time I saw Caroline and describes me like really high on drugs and like doesn't mention, she describes me high on drugs without mentioning the drugs. Like she talks about how I was late and my erratic behavior and the crazy things I said. And she mentions Adderall in passing, but the same way in that essay that she mentions that like I was having a beer or a cocktail. Like the girl who once like helped me find or tried to get me to like go to rehab, like just erases all of that from the record. And by doing that, she makes like everything I did during my addiction seem like the core of who I am. And it was very strange to see like these pills that were such a big part of they were like one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. My love for them, my hatred of them, how much they like really fueled my like own thoughts of suicide. It was very surreal to see like the whole world believing this version of me that Natalie had created that is just erratic cuz like, and I am crazy, but like this is me sober. Imagine how fucking crazy I was on Adderall. Like I was crazy, not in like a lunatic genius kind of way, but like in a I tore up like all the carpet in my dorm room sort of way, like truly like feral. But the second time she tried to sell me out was the day his body was found. She I really wanted to talk to her because, you know, I was barely keeping my head up with the viral New York magazine piece. And like now that my father's body had been found, I guess I just sort of like I just wanted her to like call it off. Like all she had to do was give one interview and be like, you know, Caroline really wrote those captions herself. Like, you know, I just clear a few things up, just make this a little easier for me. And I reached out to her via email being like, can we talk on the phone? And she was like, I actually really wanted to talk to you too. Like, it's so crazy that you emailed me. And we talked about my dad, and she was really comforting and sweet and so kind. And then and I thought that was sort of the point of our phone call. But she then revealed that she actually had a business deal that she wanted to strike. She wanted me to sell the rights to my life. So like the rights to use my name, and face and life story, for $15,000 and her forgiveness. She would be my friend again if I signed this deal. I would find out later that Netflix was offering her $1 million if she could get my life rights attached to the like option for her article. And if she couldn't get them attached, Netflix would only give her 100,000. And you know, I wasn't even angry then because I was just so sad about my dad. And I was also going through like this immense public shaming. And I was also dealing with like having like my identity as a writer taken from me, which was really a kind of grief in its own way. But the third time that made me mad at her recently was this past winter. The reason I finally got to work and started writing was because a friend who's in publishing leaked her book proposal, like the thing that you use to sell a book.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up writing about me less in her book than her proposal made it seem like she would. But her book proposal was all about me, like me. It's just like my life. Like sometimes I feel like if you want to be a fucking memoirist so bad, Natalie, get your own fucking life. But I was angry about that because honestly, I was just finally in a place where I had healed enough that I could feel my own anger. Like I had healed from my father's death and from the public shamings and my grandmother's death, and my mom's cancer is under control. And I was so mad when I saw this book proposal. I was just so finally just like sick to death of being used. And thank God I didn't sign her Netflix deal. And that deal of hers died at Netflix because can you imagine if I'd signed away my life rights for $15,000 to Ryan Murphy while
Especially in like such a vulnerable point in your life. I mean, your dad was just, his body was found rotted. I mean, that sounds like
hours
horrific.
ago. Like it really wasn't even the 15,000 that I wanted. Although, as she pointed out, like it would be very hard for me to like make money now that no one believed that I was a good person or was smart or could write. So like and she framed it like so manipulatively. Like she was like, how are you doing with money? Like, you know, I'd love to help you with money. Like would $15,000 make a difference in your life? And like like the framing it like it was a real gift. And it was really only because my manager, like, truly AA language, he one day at a time to me, like the same language that like got me out of addiction was what he used to like prevent me from signing that deal, until when I finally found out how much she was getting, or wouldn't, she ended up only getting the 100,000, but when I found out about that 1 million, I snapped out of it. You know, there've been two big reviews that compared our books side by side. First, the Washington Post, which like they were brutal to Natalie. They called, you know what, I won't say it because I told myself that I was done gloating, because boy did I fucking gloat when this article came out. I felt like karma was finally giving me my due. But they thought my book was a masterpiece. They didn't like Natalie's. And I was still angry after that, even though more good press came out. But just 3 days ago, the New Yorker, which for like a literary girl, like even though I'm like Tana Mojo for like girls who have liberal arts degrees, I still love the New Yorker and I worship it. They compared our books and they thought mine was better. I always used to say to Natalie, I was like, someday the New Yorker is going to write about this. They're going to write about us and what great writers we are, and like, and how we knew each other. And I always thought that would happen. And when the Washington Post piece came out, I sort of thought like, oh, well, it wasn't the New Yorker, but like close, like it was close. And I just, when the New Yorker wrote about it and when they liked my book more and when they just like trashed Natalie's, I honestly, I felt the anger leave me as if like like a spirit leaving the body. Like I just felt like a ghost. Whatever it was, I just like, I don't think it's right the way she used me. I just felt like I won, you know, like I lost the battle, won the war. I just felt like I'd won, and that it just felt good that like, to know that like selling out people doesn't work in the long run, because for a couple of years there, like in the short term, like I really felt like, you know, the world was rewarding her with like not just money but like praise and just like attention for like being really shitty and snaky. And I just felt like it like made me lose faith in like literally like lose faith in like the world and like humanity, because I just sort of felt like, okay, I guess like sometimes like what's the lesson here? It pays to be a snake. Like I hated that. Yeah, I was a shitty person in my 20s, but I'm glad I grew up to be not her, and because it just doesn't pay to live like that and to just like betray people. Like there may be a short-term payoff, but like down the road, everything's coming back around.
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that like she exploited you for years, and now you have finally been able to take ownership over like the life you lived, and to tell the story how it went, opposed to someone trying to conveniently leave out your addiction or conveniently leave out certain things and to approach you when you are at your most vulnerable point. There's just something really gross about that. And I think that no matter what, like, played out, I think you were destined to prevail, because operating in that manner is going to set her up for failure. Thank you for watching part 1 of my interview with Caroline Calloway. For more of her controversial story, make sure you tune in next week. Bye, guys.